Episode 4 of The Leftovers is over, but we're just getting started here on post-show recaps. I'm Josh Wigler, and I'm joined tonight by the man who I always drink Drano with. It's Antonio Mazzaro. What's up, Antonio? You got some Drano with you tonight?
I do, but it was a Christmas episode, so I'm so happy that I don't have to drink it. It's fantastic.
You don't. Why aren't you drinking the Drano?
Because Christmas and Jesus and love and presents.
And you don't incorporate Drano into that equation?
Well, no, I mean, you have Tom and Jerry's, and you have Nutmeg Punch, and you have all of these other fun holiday-based things, but we don't drink Drano at Christmas. That's for New Year's.
I guess I'm Jewish, so I don't really understand how Christmas works.
Ah, okay, yeah. So there's a bunch of crazy. You guess you're Jewish? Is that what you said?
Well, I'm not even really sure. I'm like half Jewish and half not, so
You're
it's
Jewish.
it's another conversation.
You're
It's a different.
Jewish-ish.
I'm Jewish-ish. I'm Jewish-ish.
Yeah,
I'm definitely
that's fine.
Jewish-ish.
Oh.
But my Jewishishness aside, we are here to talk about Christmas on The Leftovers. Merry Christmas, Antonio.
Merry Christmas to you, Josh. I've never been wished a Merry Christmas by a Jewishish person, so I will take it in the spirit that it was offered, and I appreciate that.
Well, I'm happy to be the first. And Antonio, you were telling me offline before we started this thing that you are a sucker for the Christmas episodes of just about anything. Is that correct?
I am. I mean, you have the Christmas music, you have, the atmosphere, everybody's happy. You always have your characters, in a familiar thing to you. We all celebrate holidays, no matter what they are around that time of year, and everybody's happy, and Christmas, 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 except, boy, the leftovers. Oh, my gosh. Boy.
Yeah, if any show can just make Christmas seem like the worst holiday of all time, it's The Leftovers.
Yeah, I mean, and this one featured we had Grinches coming in stealing photographs. I mean, we had the whole pregnant, Virgin Mary type thing going on. I don't know what's happening. We have bodies floating around. We have disappearing Jesus. I mean, this is really hitting all the buttons for Christmas episodes. So I'd like to hash them out with you, but oh man, the leftovers for Christmas is not what you want.
Yeah, we will definitely hash it out. Well, you are a sucker for Christmas episodes, Antonio, and I am a sucker for severed baby doll heads. And the beginning of this episode really gave them to me in healthy supply. So I think this episode had something for both of us tonight.
Yeah, leave it to the leftovers, right, to say, hey, we're going to do a Christmas episode. How should we start it? Oh, I don't know. Let's sever a bunch of baby doll heads and then just show how they're being mass-produced and slapped around. I mean, that right away was something that I thought, well, we're not in Kansas anymore. We're not at Christmas anymore. This is a little brutal. But, I appreciate it. I like the soundless kind of nature of it. I really wondered what was going on. I like the way that the different nativity scene shots were intercut. There's some weirdness going on. I mean, it's the leftovers, right? So we begin to expect maybe something is amiss or something's up. And sure enough, the Jesus has disappeared. Like many babies in the show, we have a disappearing baby. In this case, it's the disappearing baby Jesus, which is never good.
It's never good. It's never good. But he returns in the end, which I believe. Listen, I'm Jewish-ish, so I'm not sure how this exactly goes, but I do believe he comes back, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure he's supposed to come back in baby form, but I guess you take it how you can get it.
Her plastic baby doll form. That
Yeah,
might
well,
not be what the man upstairs intended.
on Easter he comes back as a chocolate egg, so I'm not sure we really want to, worry about that too much.
Is this an upgrade from a chocolate egg?
I mean, a doll is forever, right? You can just play with a doll. You can carry it around. You can convince perhaps drunk, perhaps not widows that maybe it's a real baby. You can, if you get sick of it, just throw it out a car window. You can really do anything with it. So
You can give it a Viking funeral.
you can give it a Viking funeral. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of options that you don't have with a little chocolate baby. So
I feel
I
like
think
you could. I feel like you could give like a chocolate Easter egg a Viking funeral, and then you'd have like s'mores.
listen, if you could, I have buried many a chocolate Easter egg.
Yeah. Well, we are going to be talking about all of the sweet, sweet treats of tonight's leftovers right now. Of course, this is a live show. If you're watching us live, hit Antonio and I up with your questions and comments about tonight's episode. Antonio's on Twitter at AC Mazzaro. That's two Z's, one R. I'm at Round Howard, like Ron Howard but rounder, and we would love to hear from you guys. And if you're listening to us in the archives, let us know what you think of the show when you are done with us. And we, of course, always love chatting leftovers with you guys. So let's just hop into tonight's super depressing Christmas episode. It really was a very, very depressing hour of television, as The Leftovers tends to be.
Yeah, although I gotta say, in terms of levity, I think this had probably more than any other episode too. I think perhaps owing to the fact that they realized they were just putting on a depressathon in this episode, and there were some truly gut-wrenching and heartbreaking moments, which I know we'll get to. I think they knew that, so they used our my favorite comic dynamite in this show, the twins. I think they used them to their max capability to get a few laughs out of me, at least, in this episode.
Yeah, the Frost Boys, they were in top form tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Jack and his brother Jack Frost.
Yeah, they're both Jack.
Yeah, well, it's their parents had a little problem. They couldn't tell them apart, so they figured give them the same name. It's easy enough.
It's better than Steve and Scott.
Yeah, exactly.
Although I believe actually one of them is named Scott.
If you know that one of them is Scott Frost, you're ahead of me in that one.
That's what Wikipedia tells me.
Well,
Wikipedia tells me Adam and Scott Frost.
All right, I think that must be what their names are then. But I prefer Jack and Jack.
And I also couldn't tell which one apart, so we can do Jack and Jack. We can do Scott and Steve, whatever you want.
So you got Jack and Jack, and then if one of them ends up with Jill, you got Jack and Jill. It works out perfect.
Oh my God, this is great. This is great. So the episode begins, and tonight's episode it's called BJ and the AC. Antonio, you were so good at decoding the episode title last week. Do you care to take a stab at this one, or should we just let it lie?
I mean, BJ and the Bear, right, is the TV show with Man and his monkey, and there's some weirdness going on there. I don't know what the AC is about. I mean, I know there's an AC Mazzaro on Twitter. I know AC is air conditioning. Yeah, I'm lost. I'm totally lost. What do you got?
I got nothing, and I don't think I can go anywhere without getting really dirty. So we'll just scoot right along, and someone smarter than us can tell us what they think the title meant in the comment section or online on Twitter, however you want to get us that info. So let's hop into the episode, and it begins as we discussed with the creation of all these baby dolls, the mass production of how it's done. I thought this was a really cool sequence of showing how it was done. It was, seeing like kind of like the thin rubber like punching through the hole, and here comes the baby mold, and it looked really cool. It was really well shot. I don't know, any takeaways from that? Was there anything symbolic that you picked up on in terms of how that was important throughout the episode tonight?
Well, like I said, I mean, on only the most, like the thinnest veneer of metaphor with the mass production of these dolls. They're also, what was the name? I mean, it was like some kind of like cheap name. I can't remember. Do you have it in your notes?
It was like affordable babies.
Yeah, Afforda, yeah, something like that. So yeah, so it really just I think showed like this is what people use to represent Jesus, like, and this isn't something that's unique to the world of the leftovers that has anything to do with the disappearance. This is something that we could relate to our own world. We're just shoving these mass-produced babies out and holding them out as Jesus. So what meaning do they really have when they disappear? People assign that meaning, and they assign it for their own reasons. And so I think there was some hint of that throughout the episode. At first, Kevin assigned that baby no meaning. Then for some reason he decided that he was going to assign it some meaning. Jill assigned that baby no meaning, or maybe she assigned it more meaning than it deserved, and then she decided not to. So I think that throughout, I think there's this line of these things are mass produced. It could be they're all the same. They're 20 inches. They're white. They have they're just a boy. They're one and the same. They're mass produced, and yet for some reason, once you put them in a manger, people assign whatever value they want to out of them. So I thought that was at least a little interesting. And I thought I thought the credit sequence was well shot. The black keys, behind the scene there worked really well. I like the static shot of the nativity with different times of day and things that were going on. I guess that's meant to represent the security camera that's on the bank across the street. I thought that all worked really well.
So then there's two things that I want to get to. One is that it becomes very clear very quickly that it's Christmas time, which means that basically 2 months have passed since the series premiere. Is that right? In 4 episodes, 2 months have passed. Do you like that time is passing so fast on the show? Do you think that benefits the storytelling?
I think so, because we've been given these hints along the way that things are about to boil over, right? And this is a slow boil, and I like that. I like that this isn't just something where October 14th, 3 years later happens, and then all of a sudden, people get crazy. I mean, I like that it's one of those things where October 14th, 3 years later happens, some weird stuff starts happening, and it will continue to happen throughout. So I like that the fact that time is passing a little bit slower in that regard. I like that we see Liv Tyler gradually adapting to the guilty remnant. I like that we're taking it in bigger chunks. That said, I thought we had some major revelations tonight, which kind of felt like they came from out of left field and struck me a little bit odd in terms of how that slow storytelling is progressing. to kind of hotshot or really reveal some major facts in the story. I thought that was interesting in light of that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll get to the Tommy Garvey of it all, in short order, I am sure. But the other big takeaway from this opening scene is this baby that we are watching get created, brought to life, brought to the nativity scene, is suddenly after a few days missing, left
Yeah,
behind, vanished.
yeah. I'm wondering, is this how babies are made, Josh? Can you tell me?
I cannot confirm or deny that this is how babies are made, but I can say that this is what my mom told me.
Okay, that there's some kind of thing that puts a bunch of goo in a hole and then a head comes out.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I think I've read about that in a book.
Okay, that's what they were saying, so it makes sense to me.
But yeah, so the baby is gone.
Yeah, the baby's gone.
This is the big mystery of the episode. Who took the baby?
Yeah, who stole Jesus?
Who stole Jesus? And we'll get to the bottom of that surprisingly quick, I think.
Yeah, I think that mystery was unraveled relatively quickly. I mean, Kevin pretty much knew immediately. I mean, we haven't seen Kevin being too good of a policeman, but man, he sure figured that one out right away.
Figured it out. Didn't really care that much either, it seemed like.
No, he didn't care that Jesus was gone to begin with. He even says, like, what do I care? Yikes.
Yeah, the only thing is, like, maybe it's like, kid, like, I'm your dad. You know I'm going through a hard time. Maybe don't make my life so difficult. I think that's probably the extent of how pissed off he was.
Yeah, yeah. And there was more of that weirdness between, Kevin and Amy,
Right.
Jill's friend. She's eating his sandwich and just kind of looking at him and throws the lights down and he walks out. So I don't really think we're going anywhere with that. I mean, I guess if they ever wanted to go to it, they've set up the stage where there's been enough scenes between just the two of them that there's something there, but they really haven't advanced it much.
So we get through the credit sequence, and it opens up with Kevin Garvey. He is talking to Patty from the Guilty Remnant. He offers her something to drink, some water, some coffee, some Drano, typical, polite host type stuff to offer your guest, right?
Yeah, little Drano, just maybe she was clogged up, maybe she wasn't feeling very well. It's the sort of thing you offer to somebody. I mean, look, we see these people smoking nonstop, so how do we know what they care about putting in their bodies, right?
Right, exactly. And I feel like it's just like the right thing to do. Like if you are going to have people over, you should always have just a tiny bit of Drano on hand.
Just in case. Yeah, you never know.
You never know. It's just good to have it. Just good to have.
I agree.
So she turns down his polite offer for a drink of Drano, and he cuts down to business and says, "Listen, holiday dance is coming up. Everybody in Mapleton's going. They want to just try and forget their problems for a little while. They want to drink a little bit. They want to just ease up and relax and just get their minds off of this horrible situation that we're all in. And if you wouldn't mind, Patty, if you just want to be a human being for a minute, please don't show up and do your whole smoking and stop wasting your breath thing. It's really annoying, and you're going to just upset people, and I don't want to have to arrest you. People just want to spend some time with their families." And she, as she always does, she writes down her response, and she says, "There is no family." And
Yeah.
Kevin Garvey doesn't know what the F that means.
He figures it out pretty quick, though, when she slams the picture of Kevin's wife in his face, which is pretty brutal.
Yeah, that's screwed up.
Up until then, she could have flipped the page and she could have just said only Zool, and there would have been a good laugh, and everybody would have gotten a nice little chuckle about the Ghostbusters reference, and we would have moved on with our lives. But unfortunately, this is not the show where that happens.
There is no family, only Zool.
Oh, all right, Zuli. Yeah, that's not exactly what. Now, if she had done that, I think that would be our top story of the evening if that had happened. But unfortunately, it didn't.
Listen, if this show wants to win me over, all the Ghostbuster references, please.
All the Ghostbuster references, and unfortunately, in a random moment this weekend, I had a realization that the woman who plays Patty was also in a featured role on True Detective. And when I realized the role that she played on True Detective, I just shuddered, and I'm still shuddering thinking about it.
I'm trying to think of who it is, and I want to ask you without you spoiling it for people who haven't
Well,
seen it.
maybe you can make some flowers and you'll figure
Oh,
it out.
no. Really?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Okay,
Yeah.
well, we don't have to get into that now, but
We don't have to, but if you...
I'm now
if
making
you,
flowers in my mind, and it's no good.
if
really
you've seen
bad.
both shows and you hadn't made that connection, when I made it, I was pretty floored, and I looked at The Leftovers and The Guilty Remnant especially in a whole new light.
All right, I'm feeling pretty guilty right now, so let's leave that as a remnant of this podcast and move right along. So speaking of moving along, Patty leaves the office and Kevin's deputy walks in. He's like, "Did it work?" And Kevin's like, "Yeah. What do you think?" So they're basically they have to come up with a plan of if these guys show up, we need to just be in place to arrest the crap out of them. And then the reports start coming in that the baby from the nativity scene has been stolen, and Kevin, like the great chief of police that he is, responds by saying, "I'm supposed to give a shit." So Kevin, really just a swell guy.
Yeah, I mean, he just he seems to be singularly focused on the guilty remnant, right? He's got the stuff on the wall. He's the chief of police. He's not the chief of the guilty remnant police. So he's got all this thing. It seems like he's working on a major case, and that's all he's focused on. And unfortunately, when you're in a small town, if you're a fireman, you get a kitten out of a tree, and if you're a cop, you might have to find the missing baby Jesus every now and then. So he says he doesn't care, but it's really part of his job. But the only part of his job he seems to care about is the guilty remnant.
So the other thing that Kevin cares about is the whereabouts of his son that he still hasn't made contact with in a long, 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 long time. So he tries to give Tommy a call, but Tommy's phone is disconnected. As we saw in one of the previous episodes, Tommy's phone was destroyed and it's gone, so Tommy is without the same phone that he had that Kevin knew to call him by. So where is Tommy? We don't know, and it turns out he's in Texas doing, I don't know. Antonio, can you tell me what Tommy's up to here?
I was going to ask you, where in God's name were they? Was that a hostel?
My wife was thinking it was a methadone clinic.
Do they give you food at a methadone clinic?
I don't
I think
know.
there were little plates of food there. There probably were some games for people to play. I mean, I don't know. But wherever it was, we had the biggest naked fight since Borat break out in the middle of it. So that was pretty rough.
Yeah, I've been demanding that Game of Thrones this past season show a little bit more Ween, and
Yeah.
they didn't really do too much Ween showing, but The Leftovers is here to answer my prayers. There's some Ween on tonight's episode of The
Yeah,
Leftovers.
I thought of you when I saw that full frontal male nudity, Josh, and I think that anytime I see it on an HBO show, I will think of you and your face and the desire that you have to see it on HBO. So
Listen, I
that's
think that one of the beauties of HBO, like a good HBO drama, has to hang some dong sometimes. I think it's just part of the rules. It's in the rule book. It has to happen. So The Leftovers has made it happen. So already, one of the only roadblocks in its way that, for it to be considered a true HBO show, it's been overcome. We're there. We're here.
what,
We've arrived.
what else is missing? What are some of the other things that a true HBO show has to have before some HBO rites of passage? What else do we need? Lesbian scene?
That's probably something that's going to have to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably going to have to happen. You're probably going to need a cameo appearance from some other actors from some of these shows. Like somebody from The Wire is going to have to show up in a prominent role at some point. Like Michael K. Williams has to be a part of the show.
Well, it's odd
Uh,
because we know The Wire exists within the world of The Leftovers. Because the mayor told Kevin, "I should have never told you to watch The Wire," when she saw his setup. So that would be interesting if Michael K. Williams shows up. What will happen in Mapleton? Are people going to start whistling "The Farmer in the Dell"? I mean,
yeah.
it'll be pretty good. I'm interested. Yeah, I definitely think we need some lesbian antics. I'm not asking for it, but for it to be a true HBO show, it's going to have to be provided. We do have the crossover from True Detective, as I've exposed this week, so we may already be getting there in terms of crossover character actors.
Yes, a lot has been exposed this week on The Leftovers. So there's this naked fight in this whatever it is, in this hospital in Texas, and this guy seems to know who Christine is, knows what's inside of her. What does he say? You walk over the dead.
Yeah, you walk over the
think that's
dead.
what
They're
he's
they're
saying.
all in white, is what he says. And then he says, "I know what's inside you." And I don't know about you, but I immediately was like, "Oh, yeah, there's a baby inside of her."
Yeah,
That makes a lot of sense.
so she's pregnant, and that is why Holy Wayne is so intent on keeping her safe, I guess, right? It must be tied to that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is she supposed to be? We had heard at the beginning of the episode, a couple of episodes ago, when they were talking about the moving in on Holy Wayne's compound, that he had been busted for statutory rape, and then he kind of in Pennsylvania, and he kind of disappeared. So
Right.
is she supposed to be underage?
She doesn't look like she's not underage.
she's small. She's Asian. Asian women tend to age very well. It's hard to tell exactly how old someone is, looking at them right away. She could be anywhere between 15 and 25, I guess, right?
She looks like she could go either side of the line. So this could fit in with the profile against Holy Wayne in terms of what his tastes are.
Yeah, I mean, statutory rape, speaking as a lawyer, you're going to prove it on statements, which, questionable in court. But if you have a baby, that's pretty strong evidence.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that would be no good. That would be no good for Wayne whatsoever. He may be able to convince her to lie and say it didn't happen, but if she's got that baby, then that's trouble. And that may be why he took a powder and really went on the run and is laying low. But on the other hand, listen. I'm enjoying the show. I really like talking to you every Sunday night. I appreciate everyone that's listening, following us, tweeting at us. We've talked about it in the past. This storyline is just going nowhere, it seems like. So I want to believe, Josh. I want to believe not in aliens, but that there is something more with this storyline. And this episode really teased us. I mean, we had the magic phone call that wasn't. We have, Christine now just being pregnant. That's the only thing that's special about her. But my thinking is this. If she's pregnant and Wayne doesn't want this information to get out there, there are ways to make that not happen. And I want to be delicate about this because I'm not in any way rooting for it. I'm saying put yourself in Wayne's shoes. If you wanted that evidence gone, you'd find a way to make it gone. So I'm not sure, does he want the baby to be born, but yet no one to know about it? I really don't know what his motives are, or if we're meant to believe that there really could be something going on here. What do you think about the whole storyline?
Well, I don't like the storyline. I'll just come right out and say that I'm not a fan of anything that's going on with Tommy and Christine. I think it's a waste of screen time, and I'm much more interested in what's going on in Mapleton, and I don't buy into the Holy Wayne character at all. He seems like a distraction. My understanding from talking with people who've read the books is that this storyline is very different from what happens in the books. I don't know how or why, but that is the impression that I've gotten from just talking to some of my friends who have read The Leftovers. I'm not a fan of it. I'm really not, and I don't know where they're going with it. I think part of it is I'm not sold on the performances in this storyline. I'm not particularly fond of the actor who's playing Tommy, and I think a lot of this is resting on you being able to root for Tommy, and I kind of just don't. I don't necessarily like the character. So this has been the hardest part of the show for me is dealing with Tommy Garvey and what's going on out in Texas. Why is my big question.
Yeah, me too. And so, if you want, let's go ahead and break the format a little bit in terms of the order and do like you guys do on Game of Thrones, which is let's stay with their geography and just wrap this up because I don't want to spend too much more time on it throughout the podcast, if that's okay with you.
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, we could really just go through it pretty fast. So Tommy has the fight with the naked guy who kind of looks like the filmmaker Edgar Wright. I don't know if you know what Edgar Wright looks like.
Yeah, absolutely, he does. He does.
Yeah. So it kind of looked like Edgar Wright, just like this is what happened. He went off the rails after he left Ant-Man, and he just like got naked and got into a fight with Tommy Garvey out in Texas. So Tommy fights Edgar Wright and leaves Edgar Wright. He goes with Christine. She's pregnant. She's been hurt in the attack, so they go and get her checked out. It's the first time that she is being really looked at by any doctors at all since she's been pregnant. They estimate that she's been pregnant for about 12 weeks, and then the doctor basically puts two and two together, sees the bruises on Christine, sees Tommy's scraped up knuckles, and she thinks that Tommy has kicked the snot out of Christine, or at least that's what Tommy deduces, and he basically says, Christine, we got to get out of here. And Christine doesn't want to get out of there because Tommy's been a dick to her earlier by saying, like, this is your fault that he attacked you, you shouldn't be talking to this crazy person, and just like another reason, like, I just do not like Tommy Garvey. Like, it is not a cool thing to say that it's your fault for getting attacked by a psychopath.
Yeah, and if I may, and I like the rest of this episode, so I want to get into this really because I don't like it and I don't want to keep going back and forth. I really didn't like when Tommy, after that, he kind of runs out of the hospital and then he's got his come to baby Jesus moment where he's sitting in the bus shield, kind of figuring out, waiting for Wayne to call, talking to the phone, saying, now's the time. If you really want to prove to me that there's something going on, you should call me right now because I'm really counting on you and I need you to let me know. I need you to show me. And then the phone rings and it's a commercial. It's like a telemarketing recording for that body service that we heard about on last week's episode. The service that was in a commercial. I think it was at Nora's house when Father Matt showed up, Reverend Matt, I should say. But yeah, we hear that commercial again, and Tommy kind of laughs, and he's got this moment where the bus driver asks him to get on the bus, and he doesn't get on the bus. And the bus, pulls away, and we see he's left there. So my question at that point is, why the hell did he stay? Like, what in that scene in any way motivated him to stay put and decide he's going to fight the good fight and try to get Christine out of there and try to defend Wayne? I mean, he's asking for Wayne to reach out to him. It's a joke. Nothing happens. Were we meant to interpret that Wayne had sent that phone call to him, and that's how Tommy read it?
No, I didn't interpret it that way. I didn't interpret that Wayne sent him that phone call. I don't know. I don't really have a good answer to it, Antonio.
Were we supposed to think that Tommy thought that? Because if we are, I don't like Tommy just because he's an idiot.
Well, I think Tommy, my read on the situation was kind of that Tommy just, he has his breakdown, he calms down a bit, and he just sort of grounds himself and nuts up and gets back to work, for lack of a better phrase. That's kind of what I took out of it, that this whole situation is so goofy. He wants to go home. There's really no going home for this kid anymore. He's gone too far with everything that he's done for Holy Wayne. He's killed for the guy. He's been on the road with Christine for so long. So that was kind of my take on it, but I couldn't tell you if that's the right answer or not. I'm so uninvested in this storyline. I just kind of don't give a crap, just to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm the same way, because if that's the case, I don't have any sympathy for the guy, because I understand that he killed for him. I understand that he's gone on the road with Christine and they're somewhere in Texas at this point, but there is going home for him. His what we find out is his stepfather cares about him and has really been looking for him since the beginning of the series. I don't know if Wayne knows where he's from or what, or if he knows what his name is, or if he would actively come to Mapleton to try to take him down, but he's got people there that will look out for him and will help him. So, I don't have a lot of sympathy for him if he thinks he's gone too far and he can't, because I just don't have that sense of it. I don't have a sense that, he's in such a pickle. We got I just think it's bad writing. I mean, I'll come right out and say it. We got some sense in the first episode that he actively cared about Christine. He had brought her some treats, and he got in trouble because every time he came back, he brought her something. And they were talking about The Bachelor or whatever, and he was really menaced with the knife, dangling of Wayne. Don't care about this girl. Don't go too far. I just don't see it anymore. I don't sense that he cares about her. I don't sense that's why he went back. Whatever crush that he had is long gone out the window. When he gets to deliver the line like, oh, well, you're pregnant with his baby, he does so in a way that's almost like he's angry about it and he's hostile about it. It's like I really don't understand what we're supposed to care about with this story or why. The fact that there was what I thought was a really well orchestrated, if poorly timed scene where they come upon a bus crash, with the bodies there and all of those, fake corpses that people have paid to have made up so they can bury them. I thought it was really well set up and everything, but again, I didn't care, and that scene actually offended me because Christine said, "Look, it's just like the dream," and I just wanted to bang my head into the table while I was watching it. I don't know how you felt about that scene.
I felt exactly the same. Absolutely. I felt completely the same. You know what I think the thing is to make the so rare Lost comparison that we do so rarely on this podcast is I feel like we are being asked to invest in like an A storyline about Boone. That's like how I feel about this character. It's just like he's a character that I don't think has the chops as a character, and I don't feel confident in Chris Zilka, the actor who's playing the character, to really ever get me to care about this guy. I just feel like it's trying too hard, and there's this mystical aspect to it that feels kind of out of touch with the rest of the show. If the point of The Leftovers is supposed to be what happens next and we're not answering why everybody disappeared, this is the part of the show that seems contradictory to that, where they really are leaning on the mysticism, and I don't know how that's going to come into play in a satisfying way if they are really serious, if Damon Lindelof is very serious about, we're not explaining the departure. The departure is going to go unexplained, and it's about what happens after that. How does that align with this sort of vision quest that surrounds everything having to do with Holy Wayne and Tommy working for him. There's a real divide there that I don't feel like I'm not seeing where it's going, and I have very little confidence in the writing and the writers knowing where this storyline is going as well. And I, more than anything, hope to be proven wrong. But everything that we've seen with this storyline in 4 episodes, I guess 3 total because it was absent from last week, but in the episodes that we've seen of this storyline, and we're almost halfway through the season, I'm really cold by this storyline.
Yeah, I mean, at least with Boone, in your example, when Boone went on a vision quest, they had the sense to pair him with John Locke. So you had a compelling, very interesting character, and they found themselves in some very compelling and interesting situations. So it wasn't even, you're right. You're asking Boone to carry the storyline on his own, away from, John and away from those situations, and it just doesn't fly. The one thing I think could save it for me, and I'll be interested what your thoughts on this are. I think this is a character, again, to borrow from Lost, who some flashbacks would at least help me align with better. I mean, we saw just a little bit of a flash of some Butch and Sundance moment that he apparently witnessed at college, and that maybe seems what drove him away from college. And, this show is about how the Garvey family in specific, but about society in general, how people have reacted to the disappearance, right? And so we see how Kevin and Lori and Jill are handling things. We know Tom is a part of that family, and we find out tonight that Tom is not the part that we necessarily thought. He is, like I said earlier, we found out that he's Kevin's stepson, and we had a question on Twitter from Dave Baker who asked what our take was on the revelation that Kevin was not Tommy's real father. I'm wondering if any of that makes you feel any differently about Tommy, or would good flashback service help to show why he maybe was able to be fooled in to following Holy Wayne around? I mean, what do you think about what we learned about Kevin and Tommy and that whole situation?
Yeah, I just think that we know so little about Tommy as a person outside of this situation. We don't know enough about the trauma he has been through and the life that he's lived and endured to get him to the point where he is willing to pop out from behind a corner and shoot like a SWAT guy in the throat, just to save this organization run by this crazy madman who does knife dancing and kisses dead bodies. Like, there's nothing that convinces me that this kid would go to such great lengths for that man. And yeah, maybe flashbacks would do the tricks. We need more information, and just the revelation that Kevin Garvey is not Tommy's biological father doesn't do that for me, not yet. And in fact, it kind of almost makes it harder to get on board with, because you can't even apply the is there like something are the Garveys mentally ill? Is Kevin mentally ill? Is his father mentally ill? You can't really apply that to Tommy anymore if he's not from Kevin's bloodline. So I don't know. I wasn't wowed by the revelation that Kevin is not Tommy's biological father. I don't know what the significance of that is going to be, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, and we had the elevator scene where the hospital security is kind of just loosely questioning Tommy about his undercover appearance with the target on his head, the bullseye, and how'd you get that way? The cop says, or something to that effect, and Tommy basically says, my father deserted me, and he says it with a little bit of confidence, like, that's a true story. That's not necessarily how I ended up, I'm not really one of these guys, but that is how I ended up where I am right now. And I don't get the sense that he's talking about Kevin there. I mean, he may be, and Kevin may be feeling really guilty, and that's why he's blowing him up on the phone. But I get the sense that he may be talking about his OG father, the original father, who seems to be a total scumbag. He's folded out of pictures, and Lori references him broadly by saying, you really helped fix me, and I made a mess of myself, and so you get the sense that this other guy was kind of a scumbag. But you also get the sense Kevin was with Tommy for a lot of his life. So, I really don't have a lot of sympathy for Tommy, and I think we do need a little flashback. One thing I will say is Avery Gordon did observe on Twitter that the phone call that we were debating whether or not we thought Tommy thought Wayne sent it. The call started with "Have you lost someone?" and Avery's interpretation was that he thought Wayne sent it because he quote unquote lost Christine. And I don't know. I don't. What I'm having a hard time with, and I think you pointed out the weakness of the actor, having a hard time figuring out if that's what if that's what the character was meant to believe or not. And it doesn't sound like you have any other opinion other than mine, which doesn't really lend a lot to what his motivations may have been.
No, I'm curious to hear what our listeners have to think about this storyline in particular, the Tommy Garvey storyline. I think we've talked about it enough right now, Antonio, but I really want to hear from the people who are listening. Let us know in the comments section. Hit us up on Twitter. Tell us what you're thinking of this Tommy thing, because I think Antonio and I are pretty down on it, and I think the show needs to start making some moves in a positive direction with that character and tightening that story and really making it make some sense, because for me it's just that's the part of the episode every time Tommy Garvey is on that I kind of check out. So I'm really curious to know if you and I are alone. I have a hunch that we're not, but what I would really love to hear are the people who are in support of the storyline and what their interpretations are and what they're thinking of it and why they're liking it, because I could use some opinions on that.
I'd like the same. Yeah. Help us out, everybody. Really. We're lost.
Let's go back to happier times. Let's go back to Christmas in Mapleton, which is not much happier, but it is Christmas. It is Christmas. So
I was really hoping that Kevin was going to see a reindeer. I was really, really hoping that.
No, and no deer this episode. And that
I know. I was hoping for a reindeer, and it didn't happen.
But almost another dead dog. So we're still on track here.
We're on track. Yep, we got
on track. So let's go back to the Garvey household, and it's after Kevin has not been able to get in touch with his son, and he asks his daughter Jill, have you been in touch with Tommy? Is he still in San Francisco? When was the last time you talked to him? And Jill's like, stop copying me, Dad, which I thought was pretty fun. I feel like if I had a cop for a father, I would probably ask him to stop copying me all the time.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty good. When you are a proud papa, Antonio, I hope someone says, stop lawyering me, Dad.
Yeah, people already asked me to stop lawyering them, so I'm familiar what that's like, and I'm not the biggest fan, but yeah.
Yeah. And people will just ask me to stop blogging them.
I was going to say, what's your request going to be?
Stop blogging about me, Dad. All right.
Well. Stop making wry observations about me, Josh. How dare you?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's going to be a thing. So Kevin is kind of curious about Jill's knowledge of where Tommy's at, but the conversation kind of quickly shifts to the stolen baby Jesus, and Jill is all, you can't replace the baby with another, fake baby. That's cheating. And Kevin Garvey, he's like, wait a second. I think you probably stole baby Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, he can cop her all he wants, because he's clearly, at least in this particular fatherly moment, he's on top of things. I mean, we saw in the first episode, he wasn't really on top of things when she said, can I borrow your car to go to a party? He had no idea that the I Choke party was happening. He thought it was just normal. Let me get the guy's phone number. It'll be fine, But in this moment, he really is right on top of it. And, he figures it out right away. I think it was funny because Jill said something like, it's sacred, like, give me a break. He knew right away.
Yeah, he knew. He knew right away. And again, I don't think he really cared that much beyond, come on, stop BSing me, stop making my life harder than it is. Just return baby Jesus. Just do it or don't. But don't turn this into a big dramatic thing.
Yeah, and I thought that was good. We didn't need to really linger with the family drama there. We've had enough of it, and I think they did a good job kind of just pivoting away from that and making it more about what Kevin was doing. And I'm curious, when you think of the lifeline of the show, this next scene where Kevin's driving around in his car, and then for whatever random reason, all the power in the car just goes out, and he has to throw on, the manual emergency brake in order to stop it all. Is this something that you think is in any way supposed to be related to the disappearance, or is this more of this weird stuff that happens to be following Kevin around, or what's going on here?
Yeah, so you're wondering if the car failures, is this something that is just like a part of this world now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it seems like if it were, this is the kind of show, as we see with the kind of fake bodies that people are burying and, the weird things that have sprung up as a result of the event. I feel like cars would be designed slightly differently, or we would see, different driving rules if this is something that was happening to everyone. That said, it was really weird. I don't know what we were meant to take away from that scene. if this is another hallucination, possible hallucination of Kevin's, or if this is something related to the magical things that have happened, or if he's just got a bad alternator or a dead battery core or something like that. I mean, I really don't know what to make of that.
A lot of question marks surrounding Kevin Garvey in terms of his grasp on reality. I think that's definitely one of the big questions of the show and one of the most interesting questions of the show. That being said, these kinds of unexplainable events like cars shutting down, disasters happening just kind of spontaneously out of nowhere, that's a thing that's happened on the show as well. So depends, I guess, Antonio, on whether you're a man of science or a man of faith. How do you read into these situations? So I think that's definitely something the show, I think, is having fun messing around with right now.
Yeah, there's two sides. One is light and one is dark. And right now I'm choosing to look at the light side and assume that the show has some sort of plan for these random happenstances, that they're not just, throwing them in there to kind of keep you baited, keep the hook baited, to keep you following the show. And I'm hoping that, there is some kind of through line in that regard. But I guess we'll find out.
Antonio.
Yes, Josh.
Do you want to know a secret?
I would like to know a secret, yes. Tell me.
The secret is that it was Jill. Jill stole baby Jesus. And we find this out because Kevin pulls over the Frost twins. The Frost twins are terrible at lying about the fact that Jill is the one who stole baby Jesus. And Kevin, again, to his credit, is just like, can you please just, return baby Jesus? That would be so much easier. And if not, I'm going to have to arrest you, and that's going to ruin your dreams of getting high in college because you'll have an arrest record. So just turn in the baby. Life will be easier. I have other stuff to worry about. And we go from that to another eye choke party, Return of the Eye Choke, without the eye choke itself, but just another party with these horrible, horrible, horrible children of Mapleton.
Yeah, they're getting baby Jesus high, and you don't get baby Jesus high. That's just not something you do.
Don't smoke up baby Jesus. Listen, even as someone who is Jewish-ish, I can tell you that is not a thing that you want to be doing.
No, we have to treat the baby Jesus, and all babies, really, with a modicum of respect that does not involve, THC in any way.
And then, okay, so that's one thing. The other thing is, so is this kid peeing on the baby Jesus? Is he farting on baby Jesus? What's he doing to baby Jesus? He's taking his pants off and hovering over baby Jesus.
Josh, do you not know about a Roman helmet?
What is that?
Well,
is there a PG-13 way of doing this?
This is a video podcast, and I guess it's video for a reason. However, I will not show you. Suffice to say that a Roman helmet had protection for the forehead and the nose. And it was worn in such a way that would protect the nose and the forehead at the same time, and that if you were so inclined, you may be able to show others what that sort of helmet looked like in a way that involved not any appliances or devices from outside what you were already given by your creator to make Roman helmets with.
All right, so two responses to that.
Let's hear it.
Response number one is, if you've made it this far in the podcast, the hashtag for this episode is Roman Helmet. So please...
No, we go searching for that hashtag on Twitter. I don't know what we're going to turn up, brother.
Let's just put that out there right now. It's going to be hashtag Roman Helmet, let's say PSR. Hashtag Roman Helmet PSR. And you are one of us now. And Antonio, if people find terrible, not safe for work things by searching for Roman Helmet, I'm going to say this is your responsibility and not mine. I'm going to lay this at your feet. So that's number one. Number two is, I cannot stand the teenagers of Mapleton. I hate these people. I wrote this on Twitter tonight. I want to punch every one of these kids in the face.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I really am, and I don't care about the state of their helmets when I hit them either, because I am not interested in protecting these kids. That said, I really, and this is a plus for the writing of the show, I really like Jill Garvey. I think she's trying very hard, and it can't have been easy for her. Her dad, being a cop, she's probably already getting a hard time, and then her mom just disappearing like that. This is not, an easy upbringing for a teenage girl. And she seems to actually be a pretty decent person at the core of it all. She's burying the dog. She's, ultimately she refuses to be Katniss Viking style and light up the baby Jesus with a Nerf arrow. So, I think at her core, she's a really good person. And I think if it takes seeing these horrible teenagers in their completely nihilistic tendencies and their horrible ways, to expose that about her, I'm okay with it, because I want somebody to root for, and I can't root for her brother. Her dad is crazy, and maybe so crazy that I don't want to get inside his headspace, but I really want to root for Jill, and I appreciate that, in juxtaposition to these horrible, horrible kids, she has the sense enough to say, you know what, I'm above this. Like, I don't feel good about this. I don't like why we're doing it. I'm going to walk away, and up yours if you don't like it. So I was major points for Jill Garvey here.
Yeah, you know what I'll say is I said I wasn't a huge fan of Chris Zilka as Tom Garvey. I don't think that he's terrific. I actually think Margaret Qualley as Jill is very good. I think that she's a really good young actress, and I think that this isn't necessarily the meatiest role on the show or even a meaty role at all, but I think that she's doing some good stuff with it, and I like it when she's on screen. I think that she's a good young actress. There's that scene, which we'll get to in a little while, of in the aftermath of the big blowout between Kevin and Lori the next morning when she's like, what did she say? And he goes, it's complicated. And when she responds with, let me know when it's simple, I thought was really well delivered and really well acted. So I agree with you. I really like Jill Garvey. I like what they're doing with that character.
Yeah, and I thought it was subtle, but I thought they also showed a little bit of concern on the faces of the twins when the whole Viking funeral was going down. They weren't the instigators, and they weren't really rooting for it either. And I think they did a little bit of that with Amy as well. So I think they're trying to protect some of these teenagers from just all being punched in the face as you're working your way down the line. I think they're trying to present you with some faces that you like enough not to see as punchable. So I think they're trying. But like you, I really find the moments where we interact with the teens at large to be relatively just,
excruciating.
Excruciating. Yeah, excruciating is a good word. Yeah, it just makes me angry.
Yeah, these kids are terrible. These children are just awful, 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 and I wish that they had all been taken. And I'm sad that we have to deal with them. I really am.
Wow.
I really am. So we are not dealing with them anymore. We are moving away from that scene. Jill Garvey refused to set the baby Jesus on fire with the Nerf bow. She walks away from the Viking funeral to the chant of "Go F yourself, go F yourself," and we go back to the Garvey household. And this is, I think, in many ways, this is probably the scene of the night, right?
Yeah, definitely. And
do you want to set this up for us?
Yeah. So what we've got, we see kind of Kevin pulling back into his driveway, and he's driving the truck around because the car's let him down, and so he's full on BBA mode in that black truck, and he hops out, and who does he see standing on his doorstep in overcoats? But his wife Lori and Meg. Her Padawan, if you will, her protege, Liv Tyler. So he's very, confused initially. I mean, this is Christmas. People might be in a giving mood. I don't know what he thinks. He knows he's on an HBO show, maybe, so he thinks something special is about to happen. But, he's serving him coffee and day-old, treats from the police station, which who doesn't love that for hospitality? He doesn't offer them Drano, so maybe...
Which is messed up.
Yeah, I mean, that's maybe he's not really... It's like salt and bread, right? You got to offer people some very sacred things when they come into your home, and Drano is one of them. And if you haven't offered them Drano, you're not being a good host.
Does Walter Frey keep Drano handy?
He does, right? I mean, Drano is known to be the only thing that cures the vampire virus on the strain. So
this is true.
I mean, he's got to have it at this point. Drano and a nice sword cane. So yeah, at any rate, they're there not for happy reasons, unfortunately.
Not for happy reasons. It turns out they are there for very unhappy reasons, and she comes with a Christmas gift that is basically the equivalent of coal in your envelope. And the long story short is she's brought Liv Tyler along. She brings Meg along so that she can read this letter out loud because she says, I could have slipped this under your door and you would have had to read it alone and go through it alone, but you don't deserve that. So it's actually kind of interesting because we find out that Lori, for whatever part of her, does care enough about Kevin and still thinks fondly enough about him that she wants to do the courtesy, do him the kindness in quotes, of basically announcing that they are getting divorced in person. So that's what this paper says. It says, you were a good husband, probably a great one. You were there when I needed someone the most. You fixed another man's mess. You fixed my mess. You raised Tommy as if he were your own, and you loved him even when he wouldn't let you. And Kevin starts putting it together. He's like, what are you doing? And he's trying to interrupt. And the letter goes on. It's, I need you to know this isn't your fault. It's nobody's fault. I was broken and I tried to fix myself for you and for Tommy and for Jill, but I think I'm just supposed to stay broken, and maybe we all are. And then we get Kevin Garvey's version of what's in the box. It's what's in the envelope. What's in the envelope? And it's not Gwyneth Paltrow's head, but
Spoiler alert.
it is divorce papers. And Kevin is pissed. He is pissed. He drops a whole ton of F-bombs on a show that is already very liberal with the use of the F-bomb. This scene gets a ton of F-bombs dropped, and he's pissed. I think he's got a right to be a little upset here. No?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I don't know how his wife met with a divorce attorney. As an attorney myself, I'm not sure how that attorney-client communication went down. Did she bring the surrogate with her there? And if so, why isn't she hiring, what's his name, Einstein, the guy from Marty Funkhauser from Curb Your Enthusiasm,
Yes.
Super Dave Osborne?
The surrogate.
Yeah, why isn't she... I want to divorce you. I don't understand what you're saying. I tried to fix myself and I couldn't. Like, why isn't that what's happening? Instead, we have Liv Tyler, who...
Kevin, I'm supposed to stay broken. Maybe we all are.
It's not your fault. Yeah, so I don't know. That would have been a better scene. We'd have much more levity. Instead, we get Liv Tyler, who is not the brightest bulb in the in the lights section of the store, because she reads off Jill's name and then later she says, "Oh, I didn't know you had a daughter." Well, I wondered, did you think Jill was a dog? Like, who did you think Jill was? You mentioned her in the letter that you were just reading. So you've got this kind of just this dispassionate, pretty China doll face there. And, of course, Kevin has the right to be upset. Like, he's dealing with... This is a really... I mean, I agree with what Laurie's sentiment was, that it would be worse if he just read it slipped under a door. But somehow this is really just having another person in the room like that who's reading her words and not responding when he says stop talking. That's really a knife in his gut. So I think the F-bombs are earned here.
Yeah, I think so. And then, of course, Jill comes in after she's had kind of a really rough night as well, and comes into this big fight between her parents for the first time in at least 6 months, because that's how long it's been since Laurie left. So she's walking into this really volatile situation. She goes to the Christmas tree, which, honestly, I'm kind of impressed that Kevin Garvey has like the energy and the Christmas spirit to get a Christmas tree.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And, I mean, he had a hard time finding the Christmas decorations, we know. So, I think we're meant to believe he's in his father's house, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know if, he dug one up out of nowhere, or if this is one of those weird family moments that he and Jill and Amy have together, or what. But, yeah, Christmas tree's up, man. I have not been in Kevin's shoes, and I've had a harder time getting mine up in the past. So props to him.
So Jill gives her mother her Christmas present. It's very awkward. Laurie leaves and leaves with Meg and opens up the present, and it is a lighter that says, "Don't forget me." Brutal.
Brutal, dude. That was such a gut punch. Like,
and even more brutal is when Meg is like, "You should keep that. I won't tell anyone," but she just throws it down the grate.
Boom, right down the grate. Yeah, that was cold-blooded.
Yeah.
And, I don't blame her for what happens later in the episode, but yeah, that whole everything was just really a punch in the gut. And you talk about, I decided my new routine is I'm going to rewatch season 1 of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, one episode at a time, or maybe 2. Right after The Leftovers starts, I'm going to do 2 a week. Because I just need something to pick me up, man. This was really...
It's a depressing show. This show is a bummer.
Yeah, why isn't Silicon Valley coming on? Why doesn't HBO have a comedy? Just anything to put on the air, right away after this. It's just, you've pointed out, it's hard to start your Monday with this on your mind, man.
It's tough. It's tough. It really is. It really is. That's why we need each other, Antonio.
I'm feeling the warm...
You make me smile. You make me smile, buddy.
You make me smile. You make my helmet all the more Roman.
And I'm saying, oh my God, I was going to say something else, and now I'm not because of what you just said. But what you did there was not cool. Not cool. Not good. Not good, Antonio. All right, let's move along. Let's take the helmets off and proceed forward. So Kevin Garvey, he wakes up in bed the next day. He's shirtless. This is nice. This is another thing. We've already seen some hanging dong earlier in the episode of The Leftovers, and now we've got shirtless Justin Theroux, and say what you will, but the man is cut. He looks good.
Yeah.
So he's looking really good, being super depressed, as you are wont to do on The Leftovers. He, looks at the photos of himself and Tommy. He sees a photo of Laurie when she was pregnant with, I guess, either her old husband or at least the father of Tommy, I would imagine, in that picture. Do you think he's out of the picture? Do you think that guy got beamed up?
I don't know if he got beamed up, but he seems to be out of the picture. I don't know about you, but I didn't get any sense that he really presented a problem throughout their marriage, which
No,
seemed
I
to have
don't.
lasted a fairly long time. So.
Yeah, I didn't get that at all.
Yeah.
Um,
Let me ask you this about this scene real quick. It's a very small bed that he's in. Were we meant to believe that this is some kind of his childhood room, perhaps?
that he's sleeping in his childhood room. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and I mean he had boxes of stuff that said Tommy on it, so clearly he had just moved stuff into the room. Whenever he moved into the house, but. I think that this may have been meant to be. This is not his bedroom. I mean, if you go back and look, he barely fits on that bed. It's a single mattress. We've seen his bedroom with the pill bottles on the nightstand and what have you.
Right.
This is not his bedroom. This is a different room. And I think this was meant to be his childhood bedroom since this is his father's house.
That's an interesting point. I didn't pick up on that, but I like that. I totally buy that. So he talks to Jill. He asks, like, what did you hear? And she's like, I heard enough. What's going on? And he said it's complicated. She says, let me know when it's simple. He goes downstairs to leave, and the Frost twins are driving off, and they've left baby Jesus on the stoop. And Jill comes around the corner, and he just holds up baby Jesus like, hey, I found him. That's good.
Yeah, I laughed at that scene.
Yeah, that's funny.
I needed some levity because in my notes when he was looking at the photos, I wrote, "This is the saddest leftovers yet."
Yeah.
It's like week-old meatloaf that you don't want. Like that's how sad this level of leftovers is. It's pretty bad, and so I was happy to have that comic scene, the twins driving away, and just the stopping and starting of the Prius, and just the worst like hidden identity criminals ever.
And so then another funny thing is, so we go to the holiday dance. Kevin walks in. He's got the baby. The other cops, they're all in the cars according to the plan. They're gonna spring up if the guilty remnant shows up, and they'll go to action. And so Kevin walks in, and the mayor is like, "Hey, let's get Chief Garvey up here to say a few words." And he has like the driest speech possible. He's like, "If you have anything to drink, just call a cab for a ride home. And hey, look, I've got the baby that I know everyone was really worried about," and like 2 people clap, maybe. No one cares, and there's just this amazing awkward silence, and the mayor's just like, "Well, we're very lucky to have you, Chief Garvey," and it's just no one cares. No one cares about anything in Mapleton.
Yeah, and especially not Kevin. I mean, they're all at this dance, and he's like the interloper, and I don't exactly know what's going on. He's trying. I mean, the mayor is like one of his. She's on his team. She's really trying to help him out here, and he just is not. For whatever reason, it's not happening. So, but one way that it might be happening, are we shipping Nora and Kevin?
Yeah, are we shipping? Are we calling them Cora or Nevin?
Oh, I thought I thought Norvin maybe or Kavora. I don't know. I had Nevin down too. So
let's go with Norvin. I think that's good.
Norvin. All right,
I think that's good. And also, if you've made it this far in the podcast, you can also use hashtag Norvin as your hashtag, as your secret hashtag. That's probably a little safer for work.
Yeah. Just Norvin is fine. Norvin. We can go with
There's
that.
no secret sexual meanings to that, Antonio?
Well, I hate to break this to you, Josh.
You can't pull a Norvin on somebody.
We may have to invent it, put it on Urban Dictionary.
Well, maybe the Leftovers is going to invent it in a future episode. We're not even quite halfway through the season, so there's time.
Perfect. Yeah, that's what we're hoping for out of these two. I don't know. We did get the revelation here that Kevin says I cheated on my wife. Just throws it out there.
He throws it out there, so we know that when he was cleaning the gutter, that was a euphemism.
Yeah, that was a euphemism. And also, I cheated on my wife. Not the best pickup line, although for whatever reason, it seems like maybe it works a little bit here.
Yeah, what does she say? Like, she asks him, why did you cheat on your wife? He says, is there a good answer to that question? And she says, I think I just heard it.
Boom.
That still doesn't sound like a good answer, but all right. This seems
hashtag Norvin. What's happening?
This seems to be working. What I thought was interesting is, so last week's episode, all about Reverend Who. It was all about Reverend Matt. And we find out that Matt and Nora are brother and sister. We also seemed to put together that Matt and the Garveys have some history, but Kevin doesn't seem to know Nora at all other than her reputation, right? So what's the disconnect there?
Bad writing, maybe, because I thought the same.
No.
I thought the same thing earlier in the episode when Kevin pulled the twins over, and he says, "You hang out with my daughter Jill, right? It's a small town. He's the chief of police. There's no way those twins aren't saying like, 'Hi, Mr. Garvey,' or like, yeah, oh, aren't you Jill's dad? Like, they just, I just didn't buy that they, were like, oh yeah, she's really cool, like, I didn't sense that he didn't know who these guys were. Like, it's a very small town, and he's one of the preeminent figures in the town. So I just don't, the logic gaps sometimes don't make a ton of sense to me, and you just exposed one that I had in my notes as well there that didn't make a ton of sense to me, that Kevin and Nora really wouldn't have crossed paths before. I mean, he is older than her, so maybe they didn't cross paths when they were younger. And yeah, he probably knows her as being a celebrity. But, we mentioned earlier that it was odd to me in an earlier podcast I mentioned that it was odd that Jill did not put together that Reverend Matt, and Nora were brother and sister. And yet she's one of the most famous residents of the town because of what happened to her. So I just don't see how they didn't know that. I just don't see how Kevin isn't putting that together, that they don't really know each other in this small town. It just seems a little odd to me. And, by means of a meet cute, I guess it makes sense that they wouldn't know each other if they want to, have one of those here in this high school locker room, like they're back in high school again. But in reality, it just doesn't fly with me.
Well, they will have plenty of time to get to know each other in the weeks ahead. I think, what would you say the chances of these two hooking up are? Pretty high.
I think next episode, man. I don't think we're going to take our time with this one.
Yeah. Well, if we're skipping around through time, well, where do you think we catch up next week? Do you think that this show misses the opportunity to give us a New Year's Eve episode?
I mean, I don't. Whether it's New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, I think we're going to have the turn of the year for sure.
I think you got it, right?
Yeah, and we didn't get fully to Christmas here, so it would be, somewhat in keeping if this episode takes place in early December. We skip ahead 3 or 4 weeks maybe to the late part of December. I think I could believe that, and I think that would fly, and I think that it makes sense that this show, which is all about these landmarks of passages of time, we started the series with that. I could see that happening here. I think that's what's going to happen.
So Kevin and Nora, they have their meet cute. I don't even know if you can call it a meet cute because it wasn't very cute. It was just a meet bummer. I would probably call it. So their meet bummer ends
like a sandwich at Arby's.
Yeah, exactly. Kevin goes outside, and they've got a problem. The guilty remnant are just on the outskirts of where it's like actionable to go and put the Ziploc bracelets on them. And Kevin basically says, well, screw it. It's their word against ours, and they don't really talk, so let's just go grab them anyway. And so they do. So you know what? Not really an orthodox method, I would say. That's not really clean police work, but I'm all for that. Good on you, Kevin. I think that was the right move.
Yeah, Brian Hickey on Twitter. We're not doing this. Brian did it on his own. He said he felt some serious Jack Shepherd vibes from Garvey tonight when he arrested the protesters.
Yeah, totally. I think that I have a good buddy of mine at MTV News, Kevin Sullivan, who's a writer there, who wrote a pretty compelling article that's just connecting Kevin Garvey to Jack Shepherd. I think that the parallels are pretty strong there. So I don't think that is something that has been lost on too many people. I think that there is a pretty clear connection between Jack Shepherd and Kevin Garvey. We don't have to get too deep into it. I think it kind of speaks for itself.
For those who want to read that link, can we throw it up in the show notes here?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I'll make sure to include that. So they arrest everybody, and another good line for Kevin Garvey, for Justin Theroux, is he's saying, I was worried, Patty, that you might be a human being for once and not show up, so thanks for not letting me down. I thought that was pretty funny.
He's feeling his oats a little bit. He just had a meat depression or whatever you call it, a meat sadness, meat bummer with Nora, so he's feeling pretty good.
He's feeling pretty good. So she kind of does this silent cackle at him, and is just very sinister about everything. And it turns out she has every right to be very sinister, because while some of the guilty remnant is busy getting arrested, the rest of the guilty remnant are doing things that should get them arrested, which is breaking into people's homes and taking photos and just that's, you tell me, Mr. Lawyer, this is not good.
It's full on Grinch mode, man.
Yeah.
It's Christmas and they're breaking in and taking away people's happy items. This is bad news.
Yeah, this is not good. So they're going around and they are stealing pictures of, I assume, the loved ones that were taken away by the sudden departure. So guilty remnant really gearing up. They're really in full. They've gone full D-bag in the town of Mapleton.
Yeah, one thing I noticed, and I thought this was a revelation, at least to me, is that Tommy got a little bit of a recruiting brochure from the Guilty Remnant at that bus stop. And up until then, I guess I hadn't recognized that the Guilty Remnant were nationwide. That
Yeah.
this is something that was occurring outside of Mapleton. So if that's happening and they are nationwide, I wonder if we're going to get some kind of investigation revelation. If Kevin were to follow the money all the way up the chain, where does it end? Is there a bigger bad than the lady who makes flowers, Patty? Is there a bigger bad than her? Is there somebody that we're going to find who has some actual nefarious motive behind the Guilty Remnant? I mean, so far we see how their recruiting tactics work. They're psychological. They break people down over time with psychological patterns. They target people who are ripe for that, and they have people there of their own volition. It's not a brainwash or a cult. So we see how that sort of works and why it works. But we don't know exactly why it's happening or what their motivation is at the top levels. And so it was interesting to me to see that there may be a bigger organization in play here than we initially thought.
Any chance that it's a Holy Wayne connection?
I doubt it. I would be shocked, and honestly, I wouldn't feel great about that.
Yeah, I'm just looking for anything, man.
No, I understand. I mean, I'm at this point, I really have no way of knowing how I could feel good about them tying him back in.
Well,
but I guess we'll just find out.
Let's not dwell too much on our own meat bummer with Holy Wayne, and we will continue on and talk about the end of this episode, which is, I think there are two interesting aspects still to talk about, which is after this sequence where the Guilty Remnant has kind of broken into everybody's homes and taken all the pictures. Lori tells Meg that she's going to walk home, and she does it because she wants to go and try and get the lighter that she dropped in the grate earlier in the episode. So I guess we see that she still has a little bit of a heart. She's not the worst human being on the planet, and she starts digging in, and I don't think that we ever see her get the lighter, so maybe it's up to our interpretation as to whether or not she was successful, but it looked like it was just out of reach.
Yeah, if she wants to get that lighter, she'll figure out a way. But yeah, I don't think she was going to get it, at least in that moment.
A metaphor, Antonio.
It's a little bit of a metaphor. And speaking of metaphors, we have another pretty ripe one at the end of the episode here, don't we?
Yeah. Why don't you take us through that?
Well, there's two things. One, Kevin wants to return the baby Jesus, his little small victory that he needed, according to the mayor. This is the one thing he's really on top of. I don't think he knows at that moment that the Guilty Remnant has pulled the wool over his eyes completely, but he gets the sense that he did exactly what Patty wanted. So he probably doesn't feel that great about it. So he wants to return the baby Jesus and kind of complete that loop and at least have done something worthwhile that episode. And somebody's beat him to the punch, and it's the Reverend Who. It's Reverend Matt. He said he had a baby Jesus left over. He just had another one, so he heard that they needed one, and he brought him there. And, so it's actually a nicer Jesus, too, which is interesting.
Reverend Matt is doing decently well, given everything that happened last week.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about that, because given everything that happened last week and where we left him off, just menacing the Guilty Remnant in that his former church, I don't know how he's really kept it all together, and it concerns me just a little bit on the sinister side that, there may be some darkness there.
He's off the rails.
Yeah, he's maybe a little bit off the rails. So, but him being off the rails ends up with the Jesus in the manger, so that's fine. But that leaves us with the question of what of this other Jesus?
It gets left behind.
It gets literally thrown aside, right? Like he gets tossed out the window.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to trade in metaphor, I mean, Kevin has literally taken this thing that has been pronounced by various characters over the episode as sacred and important, and he just throws it right out the window. Throws Jesus right out the window.
Not environmentally friendly.
No, I mean, that's not a compostable Jesus. That's why we've got to root for chocolate Jesus.
Yeah, okay. I am on board with that. Absolutely.
Perfect.
100%.
Absolutely.
But no, it's an interesting thing, and I think, if we're talking about like the list of the horrible things that Kevin Garvey has done, we can already name at least 3. So he's cheated on his wife, he has cast aside baby Jesus, and he has shot a ton of dogs.
Yeah, and I mean, realistically, he's also violated the principles of the law and free speech, right, by arresting the Guilty Remnant who were not standing on school property and were in fact standing and not trespassing in public areas, and he says, I don't care, it's our word against theirs. So, he's really pushed the envelope a little bit, Kevin Garvey, and the dog shooting is obviously the worst.
Have we seen him do the worst thing that Kevin Garvey is going to do, or is it just going to get worse?
I think it's going to get worse. What's your
Oh
take on that?
man, no, yeah, well, I think probably, but it's like it's hard to imagine how it can get much worse. I mean, like he's killed dogs, he's polluted with a baby Jesus. I guess he could Roman helmet somebody. I don't know.
Oh no!
That
Oh
would be
no!
bad.
Oh
That wouldn't
no!
be great.
I don't want to see that. I really don't, because the list of prime suspects is not. It includes people that just don't need to be on it. So I really hope that that's not the case.
I mean, he could murder somebody, which I don't think is far outside of the realm of possibility.
No, and I can see him getting there, right? Like I
Yeah,
can see him.
I could see him like going on one of those trips to hunt some of the dogs with the BBA, and I could just see him like in a moment of rage smashing a rock into the BBA's head.
We need some BBA action. I mean, this is 2 episodes in a row, no BBA, and I think we really need him to show back up again. Yeah, I can see Kevin getting there. I can see him. I can see him murdering, and I can see the show doing it in such a way that we're not exactly sure if what happened is what we saw. I mean, we already had that weird kind of surreal moment where his kitchen got damaged. We've seen him witness a lot of things that may or may not have been there. His cars have died. He's had dreams of getting in wrecks. I mean, this is a weird guy, and we've already seen a lot of weird with this guy. So if we saw him kill somebody, I'm not sure I would buy it completely.
Yeah, I don't know. So that takes us to the end of the episode. Antonio, I don't know. Did we miss anything? Is there anything we didn't cover that we need to talk about? Maybe some broad strokes opinions of the episode.
No, I mean, I like I said, I feel like they hot-shotted a lot of revelations here. We got Kevin not being Tommy's real dad. We got Kevin actually did cheat on his wife. We got, the guilty remnant is not just in, and actually I thought that was a good job of subtly doing that one. But there were some broader spectrum revelations here. The guilty remnant is not just in Mapleton, like I said. There are, so I think that we did some good there in advancing the general story and plot line. But for a Christmas episode, I was really let down. There wasn't a little more holiday cheer.
No, well, holiday cheer is not the Leftovers' forte.
No, it's not. I mean, but there could have been a snowman or like a snow statue of someone disappearing, or I don't know. I wanted something a little more whimsical. I did really like the musical transitions, especially early in the episode. I thought they did a really good job with the holiday music, and yet the really downer, depressing kind of subject matter that we were dealing with. I thought that was really well placed, because I thought if you're going to do a holiday episode, you expect those holiday musical transitions, but they were done in a way I thought that was really kind of tasteful and subtle, but in a way that really served to make the emotions that were playing in those scenes pop a little bit more with the juxtaposition.
I think for all the criticisms that can be laid at the feet of the Leftovers right now, the score by Max Richter is very much not one of them. I think that the music of this show is the strongest part by leaps and bounds for me.
I agree. The scene where Jill was going to shoot the Viking funeral baby Jesus, they did a really good job with the music there. It popped because it was a little bit dark and a little bit suspenseful, and it put an edge on a scene that was just kids screwing around. It really raised the stakes in a subtle way, and I thought that was really good.
Yeah, the music's great. Music's awesome on this show. So I don't know. We'll see. I don't think either of us are very happy with what's going on with Tommy, but it is what it is. We will see how that's going. We will continue to chart that. Where do you put this episode versus last week's episode? Did you prefer our hour with the good Reverend Matt Jameson versus tonight's sort of return to form of the for Garvey perspective show? Which one do you prefer?
I preferred last week's. I'm hoping that it's not a sign like regular Leftovers that over time they start to stink and get fetid and they're not digestible. I really hope that what this was we had to reset kind of where we were in the ensemble world with the townspeople of Mapleton, and we had characters fall into the background. I think last week's episode was proof of concept in some ways, that the show can be about more or can really play on a different level than just this week-to-week kind of ensemble, every 3 or 4 weeks checking in on the town and seeing what people are doing. So I really like that as an exemplar episode for the way the show can be. But that said, I didn't, other than the Tom stuff, which unfortunately was a lot of screen time, I wasn't disappointed with this week's episode, in terms of the Garvey family. I thought they did a pretty good job with some emotional moments there, with with service to those emotional moments that was necessary for the half to that.
Yeah, I think so. I didn't like it as much as last week's episode. I really liked last week's. I thought last week's was a real step in the right direction for the show, with maybe a couple of exceptions here and there. There were a few scenes that you and I didn't like that much. By far and away, I thought last week's was stronger than tonight's. But we'll see. You know, there was a lot that I did like tonight, but there was a lot that I did not, especially the Tommy stuff. So I am continuing to chart my own enthusiasm over the leftovers, as we've talked about on this podcast many times. I think one of the exciting things about this new show is that we are figuring out our own opinions on the show as well, kind of live as we are going here. So we'll see. I'm interested to see where I wind up by the end of the season.
I'm interested to see where you wind up too.
Absolutely. And we will continue charting the leftovers next week. Also, The Strain on FX, the crazy, crazy, crazy vampire show, that airs on Sunday nights, but our podcasts with Rob Sesternino and I, those are going to be on Monday nights. So look out for that Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern if you are watching The Strain as well as The Leftovers. It's a very weird, crazy, fun show. So hope you guys will join us for that. If you guys like what Antonio and I do, we have been co-hosting a Lost podcast here on post-show recaps. We've been trying to curb the Lost references here on the Leftovers podcast because we now have an outlet for it, which has been very healthy for both of us, and I think we've both been enjoying it. We've been doing those shows with AJ Mass, a friend of the podcast, and also Joe Garfine, who's a big person in the Lost community. It's been very fun. We've done 2 of those shows so far. We're not going to be able to do one this week, but we will be back the week after. So if you want to check out any of that stuff, you should subscribe to Post Show Recaps. Go to postshowrecaps.com/iTunes. Never miss an episode. We will always be here for you, just as you are always here for us. We can't thank you guys enough. And yeah, we'll see you real soon to talk more leftovers. So thanks everybody, and avoid the Drano. Don't actually drink any Drano. That's really not a good thing or an advisable thing. Just drink some water or something, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.